Like Travis, but it's pronounced correctly.
Okay. And your last name?
Detke, Dettke.
And where you from, man?
Originally from North Dakota, Williston, North Dakota, the oil field up there, and born and raised. And I moved down to Louisiana in '81. I worked for Subsea International for 20 years, Global Industries for a year and a half, Transcoastal Marine for a year and a half, Aquatica Caldive for 12 years. It started out as Aquatica and then they merged to Caldive, and Aqueous for 12 years, almost.
Yeah, because Caldi was doing a lot of saturation diving.
Caldive did a lot of saturation
They had
diving.
the moon pool mill of their boats, I remember that.
Right.
Yes.
I was the general manager of their surface diving group, so I didn't have a lot to do with the saturation side of the company. But the surface side, all the 4 points, all the utility boats, and the general diving reported up through me. As I mentioned, I came from North Dakota. I worked in the oil field up there, and I attended college in Grand Forks. While I was in college, I took a scuba course through the local YMCA, and I loved scuba diving. But in North Dakota, the water's cold most of the year, and not a lot to see. The visibility was rather poor, but I still loved it. And I loved roughnecking, and I found out that there was a profession called commercial oil field diving. And I thought, man, how can you get any better than that? So I packed everything I owned up, went to California, took the course out there at CDC, graduated in July of '77, and 2 days later I was in Aberdeen, Scotland, working for Subsea International. Short offshore career. I worked 4 seasons. Worked as a diver. Started out, my first job was on the Piper Alpha as a tender, and I worked out there for about a year and a half. Broke out after 10 and a half months to diver, and about 6 months later I finished my first SAT, and that was my last job on the Piper. I worked on several other oil fields, DP diving in the North Sea, and then I transferred to Subsea in the Gulf of Mexico in a sales capacity. Worked as a salesman and as a area manager in New Iberia. Moved to New Orleans and got into operations with the diving group over there, estimating, and stayed with Subsea for 20 years until we were sold to Global. I worked at Global Industries for a year and a half, Transcoastal Marine for another year and a half, and then Aquatica Caldive for 12, Aqueous for 12. I finished my career up at Aqueous with VP of Operations and then VP of Sales. And I'm now retired after 47 years in the industry. I've got 1 year of retirement under my belt, and I'm still involved in the industry. I stay involved with the Dive Safety Work Group, the treasurer or secretary of that association, and I'm a freelance consultant and subject matter expert. The one that I really remember most fondly was working in the North Sea. We were working off a DP vessel. It's the first DP vessel that Subsea International chartered, and we were doing anode retrofits on the Ninian field, the Ninian Southern and the Ninian Northern structures, and diving SAT. We had 3 teams in SAT, all at different depths, and my partner and I were in the middle depth, so we could excurt up or excurt down. And we found ourselves, when we'd start a dive, we'd go down to finish an anode that the team before us wasn't able to finish, and occasionally we'd have an excursion up to finish one that they hadn't finished. So we were the cleanup crew, fixing their stuff plus doing everything in our depth range, and we never left anything for those 2 teams to finish ourselves. We nailed it, and that was probably the most fun I had diving. It was a big challenge. They were big bracelet anodes, and my partner and I had a process down to get those things in place and button them up, and we were kicking ass. Yeah. Well, that same job. Topside asked my partner and I to write a procedure. What were we doing? Because the other teams were struggling. I mean, these are big pieces of iron and zinc, and they were struggling to get those things down and landed and closed and buttoned up. And so we finished a dive, and we had a real successful dive, and the supervisor came down and locked in some paper, colored pencils, protractors, compasses, straight edges, and said, draw it out, spell it out, step by step. What the hell are you doing? How do you do it to get this done as smoothly as you're getting it done? And my partner wrote his procedure, I wrote mine. We traded just to review each other's work before we sent it out. And both of us, I read what Gary was doing, he read what I was doing, and we looked at each other and said, are you shitting me? Because I was taking chances. I used the working tugger. I used the swell of the seas on the boat to just gently bring the clamp closed. He used a long ass draw bolt and tediously drew them together. And I had tried that once and rejected it. It was just too time consuming for me. And so I came up with this other process, and it was rather high risk. I mean, if they'd had a real heavy swell up there, and I was in my critical phase of drawing that thing together, a big swell might have slammed it shut and caught me in between it. So it was a bit high risk, but it was very successful for me, and I made it work. Biggest advice, two things. I would say you're always learning. You always have to pay attention to the old divers, learn from them. A good diver will share his knowledge so that other people can take advantage of it. There's nothing about hoarding the information so that you've got job security. To me, job security is teaching, mentoring, and making sure that everybody learns. So every day go out there, pay attention to what they're doing, ask them why they're doing it the way they're doing it, and learn. Every day there's something to learn. And the other thing, kind of a long story, but working at Keldive had a couple fatalities back in the early 2000s. And I was brought to a fatality presentation with a major client. The client wanted us to explain how these two divers had died. He wanted the root cause. He wanted the corrective actions that we'd put in place to make sure it wouldn't happen again, the lessons learned. And Keldive had to do that with several different clients. We had to do it with the industry, the ADCI, the Chevron Dive Improvement Team meetings. I had given that fatality presentation on both of those two incidents several times, as well as several other actors in the company. But we went in there and explained what happened, how it happened, what we learned, corrective actions that we'd taken. And we shared that with the industry so they would be able to take it home and prevent it from happening. But at the end of the day, the client asked, he said, how many of you were divers? And the bulk of the Keldive team had been divers at one point in their career. A couple hadn't. And he said, what frightened you as a diver? What scared you? What kept you on edge? And does it still apply to today's divers? And my reply, everybody kind of paused. I mean, it wasn't a question we were expecting, but I got the opportunity to answer it. And I said, what frightened me as a young diver was blowing a dive, going in the water and not accomplishing my task. Now, you can't always accomplish your task. You may not have time. You may not have the tools, whatever. But you always try to leave the job better so the next guy coming behind you, it's going to be easier for him. And you're setting him up to succeed. And it may take 5, 6 dives before you complete the task. But I said, my biggest fear as a diver was screwing up a dive. And coming back to the surface and facing all my team members and having them think that I'm the wuss, the worm diver that can't get shit done. It's a big motivator.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no question in my mind, 20, 25 years later, it still motivates our young guys. Young divers coming into our industry, it's a challenging industry. We think of them all as alpha personalities. I can get it done. I'm a big badass deep sea diver, and you'll hear it amongst these guys out here. I was the best diver in the Gulf. Any number of them. Most of them will say that. And that's their ego speaking, which is fine. But the fact of the matter is, every one of them has a bad dive, has had a bad dive, or 2 or 3. The only exception is probably me. And, and there aren't many alive that can tell you that I'm lying. So that's the motivator. And the fact is, in my position at Keldive and when I moved on to Aquis, senior management, I told this story to all my young guys. You will have bad dives. It may be you woke up wrong, it just didn't feel right, all sorts of various factors kind of piled up on you, and it just didn't go the way you planned. Don't let it define you. You learn from it. Next time you go down, you're going to do better. But don't let that one dive, that old saying in diving is that you're only as good as your last dive. I call bullshit on that. You should learn from that bad dive, and because everybody's going to have them. Every man has a bad day. Every woman has a bad day, or more. And don't let them define you. Learn from it. Get down there next time and do better. And that's my message to the young kids. Just learn from this industry. It's a fabulous industry, and I hope they all grow old in it, save your money, and retire comfortably with a whole bunch of grandkids to bounce on your knees.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, it's these events, these diverines, I love them. I see a lot of faces, people I've known for 40 plus years. Occasionally I'll run into somebody that I worked with overseas 45, 46 years ago, and connecting with them. First challenge is recognizing them and then connecting with them.
We don't look the same.
Oh God, we don't look the same. We don't look at all alike anymore, but no, it's a good industry.
Okay, well, you're good. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.